just so unfair. My world literally has been turned upside down, and nothing is making sense to me.
In the aftermath of the crash at Sioux City, Al Haynes and Denny Fitch were hailed as heroes.
Well, I didn't expect to crash. Let's put it as a crash landing.
Their remarkable piloting of the crippled plane ensured 185 people survived. But 111 died, and this loss would haunt the two pilots.
I didn't do what I was supposed to do. My job was to take that airplane from Denver to Chicago safely. But I didn't do what I was paid to do. And that's bothered me ever since.
You relive the approach over and over and over again. I flew it a million times trying to find the right way to do this. How could I have done this differently? How could I have made it better? It's quite painful as a pilot because you couldn't, you want to trade your life for that 9-year-old died.
Feelings of guilt among survivors is a common experience, one of the most difficult issues they confront.
Why was it that I was spared and these other people weren't? And I think in both cases, it comes down to the need that human beings have for meaning, to make sense of their experiences, and not to believe that what occurs to us is haphazard and random and has no explanation.
When this happened, I was a young single woman. I had no children, and I felt really guilty because mothers had died and fathers had died. And I basically, was on my own. And I thought, why? Why me and not them?
If you've been through a situation like a plane crash and there are people around you who've died, maybe you've seen burning bodies, you've escaped the plane and other people haven't, there's very likely to be a similar why me question. Why was I the lucky one? Why did these other people get not only die, but in horribly painful ways, and I walked out?
You cannot possibly understand the guilt of survival. You say, boy, you were lucky. You're lucky to get out of that. That doesn't work. It may work for your neighbor trying to make you feel better, but it doesn't settle you down.
But even if no one dies in a plane crash, survivors are not immune to the repercussions of the aftermath. January 2009, New York City. U.S. Airways Flight 1549 to Charlotte makes an emergency landing in the Hudson River. Thanks to the skill of the captain and the crew, all 155 passengers survive. Valley Collins was a passenger on that U.S. Airways plane. Today, she's come back to New York to show her 10-year-old daughter, Addison, the place where she so nearly lost her life.
So the plane actually landed up here, and we floated down, and most of the pictures you see, we're right here, because Mommy was looking out at that building right there.
On that day in January, Valley, a working mother of 3, was returning home to Knoxville, Tennessee, following a business trip to New York. But just moments after takeoff, Valley and the other passengers got the shock of their lives.
We heard a boom when the plane dropped.
A flock of geese hit the plane's 2 engines, disabling them and forcing the aircraft to glide with no power over New York City.
I could smell smoke from the left side, and at this moment, I assumed we were crashing.
Valley's thoughts immediately turned to her husband back home.
So I get my phone, and I turn it on, and I send him a text message that just says, my flight is crashing. I just wanted him to start dealing with the process of telling our children and moving forward.
In the minutes the plane was airborne, Valley's perception of her life changed.
I just always thought I'd be 95 in a nursing home. Never dreamed I'd be 37 in a plane crash. I'm not going to see my children grow up. I'm not going to be at my daughter's wedding.
Unable to reach any nearby runways, The captain's only option was to land the plane in one of the busiest waterways in America.
Then over the PA system, you hear this is in the most calm, steady voice that I probably have ever heard was, "This is the captain. Brace for impact." Lord, if this is your will, then I accept it. Take care of my family and my friends. And I kind of turned my head and said goodbye to the earthly life. Once we stopped, you look down and the plane's all in one piece, and I'm not underwater. I'm still alive. You literally kind of pinch yourself. Like, wow, I'm still here.
Valley had survived, but the plane was now sinking into the Hudson with ice-cold water pouring into the cabin.
I kind of had a moment and I thought, panic's not going to save your life. Valley, get yourself off this plane.
Along with the other passengers, Valley made her way out of the cabin and onto the wings of the aircraft, into the middle of a massive rescue operation.
I became very scared. The water was very choppy. Ferry boats are approaching, helicopters are overhead.
The heroics of the pilot and crew had allowed Valley to escape death. Celebrated as a plane crash survivor, she appeared to get her life back to normal very quickly.
I would look in the mirror and be like, you walked away from a plane crash without a scratch on me, really. And even mentally at that point, I thought, I'm good. I'm good. That changes, though, once the shock wears off. Every thought was something about that plane, something about almost dying, or asking yourself a question, why am I still here? And it was just kind of like the walls started caving in.
The way a lot of us get through the day is we have a very deep conviction. Everything's going to be fine. I'm a reasonable person. And the horrible reality that people who've been through trauma know is that you can do all the right things and take all the reasonable precautions, and it doesn't guarantee that horrific things won't happen to you. It's a very hard thing to live with once you've experienced it firsthand.
Valley was struggling with the classic first symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, a condition common to nearly all plane crash survivors.
Physically, I was fine. I'm at the point where I wished I had had a bunch of broken bones, or a big gash on my head, or a broken, so somebody go, oh, okay, you've been in a plane crash. That's why you're not quite yourself. But on the exterior, I looked just completely the same as I always did. But on the inside, my capacity to handle things was so diminished.
Mercedes Ramirez Johnson was one of only 4 survivors of a horrific 1995 plane crash in Buga, Colombia. 160 people died, among them her mother and father. Now Mercedes was faced with the challenge of making sense of the rest of her life.
My life is described as before the plane crash and after the plane crash. Happy-go-lucky, carefree life before, and then the realities of having to grow up and fend for myself and live on without my parents.
Her initial recovery was slow. Everything felt meaningless in the months following the crash.
I promised to make my life count. Well, what am I going to do about that now to actually make my life count and to make that second chance count for something?
Then one night, she had a life-changing dream. In it, she was giving a college presentation when she noticed her parents in the audience.
And I stop, and I say, what are you guys doing here? And they wouldn't answer me back. They just kept on smiling and nodding. And so, after I woke up from that dream, I had the best feeling because I knew, you know what? It doesn't matter the stress that I have. It doesn't matter. Obviously, some days are going to be better than others, but I have them cheering me on, And I have